and there are a lot more other things that the medical doctor need to do. So the medical doctor was very unhappy and saying that why don't we have these things for others to take care of us? We only take care of the patient. But in real life, it doesn't work that way, because like filling up the insurance form, they need the doctor's diagnostic and signature and recommendation, right? So what happened? Hospital authority was saying that, okay, in this case, then maybe we should give a little bit training for this medical doctor on managing change. I still remember that time when we have that training. The training, I have around 40 medical doctors, and they give the medical doctor 3 days holiday. No, not really holiday, but they call it staff development day. So 3 days they have come to the university that time, and we'll give them 3 days training only on managing change. I still remember the first day, 9 o'clock. I walked into the room. Actually, that time I was a little younger. I walk in, the medical doctor looked at me. Actually, they are, kind of say, what? What's your name? You going to teach us how to manage change? In other words, number one, I'm not a medical doctor. Second, I don't look that old. So you think that you are going to come and tell us, learn managing of change? So at first, they really give me that kind of feeling, like student, you dare not to, even you look at me, you don't like me, but you'll be quiet, right? But those medical doctors, they are not young, especially those 40, 50 years old. Because the young one, the medical school already gave them a little more practice on it. I know. If I'm going to, give a lecture like how to change, they would really think that I'm just giving out theories. So what I did, the first thing I will tell them is, I have a mini test in my hand. It's just simple multiple choices. I remember that time is like 30 MC. I say, I give it to you all. If you can have it all right with my multiple choices in MC, that means actually you already knew how to make changes. And you don't, then in that case, I will take your attendance. So these 3 days, you don't have to come to class and you can have a holiday. I will take your attendance because you already know about it. So I say, those doctors say, oh, no big deal, MC, right? Fine. I give it to them and do it. You know what? At the end, none of them get it correct. And they look at the MC and they're saying, that, what's that mean? How this mean? So my MC actually is testing not the technique how to change, because technique you can have a company rules and regulations. The things that I want them to think of actually is mentally. Do you really want to change? Or how are you going to face something new? So, end up, they all have to come to be in attendance, because they didn't realize that making change actually involved mostly is mental. Now, so young people, we don't have this mental problem, right? You want to change, good, I'm so bored, do something new. But older people don't think of it that way. Why? Because if it is routine, you don't need to pay attention, right? Day in and day out the same. But when there are change, you need to pay attention and you need to learn. Later on, I will tell, learning is painful. The word painful, yes. Not that I say it or you feel it. Actually, in psychology, they teach and saying that learning is painful. That's why a lot of people don't like to learn. But after you learn, it's enjoyable. Because after you learn it, you knew it, and you'll find that, this is fun, right? Now, I'm sure that, some of you know how to swim, right? Is it this class I have someone who can swim across to harbor, to Hong Kong side? Oh, I think she is sick today. She mentioned to me this morning. I'm sure that, if you're going, what am I talking about? Suddenly I forgot it. at the. Can someone help me to pick it up? What was I talking about? The change? Yeah. What was my topic? I suddenly forgot what I was talking about. The doctors. About the MC, Then inside is not really talking about the procedures, but actually it's talking about the willingness. And they enjoy looking at something when they are changed. So yes, so that is what we want to learn in these chapters, is that of course we like to have some rules and regulations to help people to change, but mostly we want them to think of is that the willingness to accept the change itself. All right? Okay, so that is a long introduction, but actually once you understand the objective of it, you will find that it is quite interesting. So in this chapter, and the second part of the lecture, we'll talk about managing stress, but we are not going to cover that. Next time, if you are interested in psychology, especially in organizational psychologies, there is another module. It is called organizational behavior. That is basically social psychology and psychology applied into the business world. So the managing stress, we are not going to talk about it. So it is going to be on chapter 2, page 213 to 226. All right? Okay. Did anyone read this book? Or have you any knowledge about this book? The book is called Book of Change. I remember when I was in the in Western countries, because I also worked there too, and I heard a lot of people say, Chinese people are very stubborn. They don't like to change. That's why I look at the Chinatown, forever is the same thing. Every time when I heard that, I was so upset as a Chinese. I was quite upset. I would tell them, what made you think that we Chinese do not like to make change? We Chinese wrote the book of change. Anyone know this book? No? The Book of Change. This is a classic for Chinese. Now, there is another book. If you are Chinese, you should read it. The other book is 孙子兵法. 孙子兵法 actually is not long. The whole book is only around 3,000 words. And United States of America, when they have to join the military, they have to study this book. So even American soldiers will have to learn to read that book. So that book is on the top of the list in the world that, don't talk about religion, Bible, because Bible is always the top selling books. The second one is, the most people, read it, is 孙子兵法. This one is another classic for the Chinese. Don't tell me you are Chinese if you don't know this book. Anyone know it? Anyone? The Book of Change. Heard of this book? Huh? Dịch Kinh. I don't think you will read it. I don't think honestly, you are not in you are what they call class, you are not qualified to read this book yet. But this is a very famous book. Nowadays, a lot of people use this book to do fortune telling. Why? Because this book actually is, if you use a scientific method to look at it, is that they absorb all this year's record and make a statistic. So this book is telling us the cycle, that every 60 years there is a cycle. And every 12 years is a small cycle. Every day is a small cycle. Now, because they can look at the past and see there is a pattern. So they use this information to predict the future. Basically, if you look at it using scientific method to look at it, this is the statistic of the past. So they will tell you that in the future, more or less, things will go in a cycle. That's what the book said. And so that's the reason nowadays, people want to use this for fortune telling. Like this, I think that this year they say is the first year of the 60-year cycle. And every 60 years, the first year is a bad year because they look at the past history that, some years ago, the first year of the 60 years cycle is what, 八國聯軍入 China. So there was a very bad year. And then one year, I think that some years ago, I forgot the day, is that鴉片戰爭. This thing all happened to be the first year of the cycle. Now, I don't know if this is true or not, but by looking at the statistic of the past, probably will give us an idea that the chance that bad things happen in the future may happen, Now, so this book is actually the concept is saying. Let's don't worry about the content because I read it. I don't understand it either. They have so many those old-fashioned Chinese words, and really, it's very difficult to understand. I remember I learned this book when I was in secondary school in literature class. My literature teacher told us, the one who wrote this book said, if you are not at the age of 60 and with a lot of experience in life, you won't understand the text, this book. In other words, if you're too young and if you don't have much of experience, you won't understand it. I still remember that time that I was in secondary school. I was saying that, what's so big deal about that book? I bought one and I tried to read one. I hardly can understand a sentence. But they use the old-fashioned Chinese wording. And even nowadays, I still have difficulty understanding it. I guess it's because of language difficulties. But what is the concept in here? The concept here is saying that whether you like it or not, things will change. Some will go fast, some will go slow. Accept it because this is the universe. So whatever that is, you prepare for it. Now, when you say prepare, it may mean the Chinese is very, abstract, right? You may mean that mentally prepare for it. Or for us, in the business world, practically prepare for it. So it is a book that I was saying that we are, as a Chinese, should be proud of it because, so far right now, that is a very, I would say, popular book, and the world is actually would like to read that too. All right, now, so let's move on and look at, hey, let's come back to the business world. In the organizations, we cannot go and use, the book of change and then do what? Do some fortune telling, right? To tell us what will happen. So in the organization, what should we do? Or what are the things that we want to focus at? Especially, we only have one lecture on this, so we want to be very focused. Now, so in an organization, when we are talking about change, we are focusing on three things. That is, people, structure, and the technologies. Remember these three words. Three of them is just like three legs of the table. Because we look at a lot of organizations. They say they want to change. So what happened? All they change is only one part. If you change one part, it's just like a table, only one leg. It is not going to be stable and work. Oh, so you say, I have two legs, still it's not stable. They said, if you really want to change successfully, three things have to happen at the same time. Of course, a lot of companies like to do what? They like to change is technologies, right? But if you change the technology without the people support, it's not going to work. Some people will say that I change people, yes, you can change people, but people have a habit. Tomorrow you want them to change? Yes, tomorrow they will change. But the change will not continue because won't be long, you forgot all about it, right? I'm sure that, this happen all the time. In school, at the beginning of semester, students are all on time. In the half of the time, students are coming late and it's getting worse. Why? You tell yourself, this is a new semester, I want to study, I want to be, do well. Yes, you are. How many weeks you can survive, right? As times go by, you lost that excitement. Once you lost that excitement, you go back to the old habit. Now, so some people want to make change only on people. It's not going to last. So what is structure? Structure means that the organization needs a system to support it. Because if you want to change, you have the technologies, but the company is not helping you. Now, what is helping? For example, like setting up the equipment for you, setting up the procedures for you to support you to make the change. Now, so when we are going to talk about change here in organization, we're really focusing on these three things, all right? Structure, people, and technologies. Now, the change that we are going to learn here can be, you are the managers, you introduce the change. Or you can be what we call the change agents. This is like consultants. That means that as an outsider, you have no benefit into it. So you will go and look into it and see what's wrong, what can be changed, and you are going to tell the organizations. Actually, in my career, I like this one very much because I like to be a consultant. It's very interesting when you go and visit the company and find out what's wrong with them, and you make change suggestions. Now, a lot of people like to hire outsider as a consultant is because that after they make the suggestions, they are very objective. So in other words, if I'm the manager, I make the change, you probably think that all the change you make is benefit for yourself, right? No, if you have an outsider, you don't have to worry because the one that a consultant don't get any benefit from it. And this may be the reason why that sometimes you heard government say, right? Government saying that we're going to hire outside consultants. We understand hiring consultants is expensive, but there is a lot of benefit to it is because it's more objective. Okay, now, so here are the focus that we want to look at. Next, sometimes we want to ask, what caused that we need to change? Because change is expensive to your organizations. So what are the causes that we have to change? Now, of course, here are some of the suggestions that what could require to change. Now, but honestly, in the real world, all the management textbooks we look through, nothing is mentioned about external is the COVID-19, right? Nobody ever believed that, a disease is so bad like this, that will affect our business world. Now, so what are the things that we're looking at? Changing customers' needs and wants. Yes, when customer make any certain, especially generation coming up, so customers' need and change may vary. So these things you always have to keep an eye on. The second one is new government law. In business, the government's regulations seriously affecting us. Now, like for example, the privacy law, the safety law, and the environmental protection orders, you can see that actually big corporation, they will have a lawyer. All the time they keep an eye on the government's regulation. How is that going to affect the company? Don't talk about just big legal things. Small things is like the employment law. How many holidays you're supposed to give the workers? Government may change. And what are the minimum wage? May change. So you have to change your record accordingly. Changing technologies. This one, few years ago, I was saying that changing technology, I would say your mobile phone. But now, no. Something that is more substantial is looking at is the payment system in the world. Because how you're going to pay makes a whole lot of difference nowadays. That there's so many different ways to pay, and it is a critical issue because we are talking about safety too. So I would say that in the near future, I think that government don't need to print money anymore because not too many people are really going to pay by real cash or money. And of course, changing technology and economical changes. Economical changes right now, a lot of predictions. This is because of the sickness recent years. So a lot of things that we learn in the economic predictions do not factor into such a serious sickness. But I was hoping that by the year you graduate, the society should be back to normal. I'm not looking good for the next 2 years because right now, not only because of the virus, also is the U.S. government is trying to do a lot of things against the Chinese. More or less, there is some effect into it. Some group of the industry may be benefit, but the others are not. So this is a very interesting thing that a lot of economists is predicting and talking about it. So I would just say wait and see. The only thing I'm hoping for is my year one student, by the time you graduate, the economic situation back to normal, and that is not going to affect you for looking for jobs. Okay, now, besides the external factor, there are some internal factors. One is new organizational strategies. Sometimes, actually, we recommend organizations will need to have a strategy for at least for the next 3-5 years minimum. Now, but when situation change, company will need to change their strategies. Now let's use an example. You all know about Hong Kong Bank, right? Do you find anything go wrong with Hong Kong Bank? Nothing special, right? But if you really look into the company carefully, you will know Hong Kong Bank is not in a good shape. You say, why? Not a good shape does still mean that we need to go and get our money out? No, this is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the future of Hong Kong Bank. Now, I just use that as an example. Hong Kong Bank was hoping, and in the past, they actually is hoping to get the market in America, in Europe, both parts. And they are not very focused in China. But now they realize that European market and American market is pretty saturated by their own bank. So Hong Kong Bank right now is having this dilemma, that means don't know what to do, that whether they should go to US and compete there strongly or compete with the European people, the bank there. Or they should come back and focus to the Asian market. Because right now they think that the Asian market have less competitor. But they are fairly new to explore it. Now, so this is what we call that changing organization strategies. Because if that Hong Kong Bank want to say that now our focus in the North America, then a lot of policy procedure you have to change it. But you want to go to Europe because Europe have a different kind of government requirement and there is a different system. Then they have to think of how they change it. If they come to China, go to Asia, especially China, they sure need to change their company image. So this is something that you have to think of. Can you do that, in the next month? You can't, because a lot of things you have to prepare for it and planning for the future. I remember Charter Bank. You heard of it, Charter Bank, right? Years ago, when China is not really that open, they don't allow foreign company to work there much, especially if you are a bank. because they don't let the currency in and out so easy. So what happened is that there's no banks, going to open a office in China because, they don't allow you to do business there. And one of my friends actually was working in Charter Bank, and he was stationed in Shanghai. So I was asking him, what are you doing there? You are not supposed to have a business there, and you are not supposed to have, open a real bank there. So why are you staying there? And they're saying that this is company's strategies. They're saying that China Bank have a strategy and plan for the future that is open China market. Once China open the door, China Bank want to be there. But you cannot just suddenly go in and say, we are China Bank, trust us, right? So that's why the China Bank said, even we are not allowed to do business there, we have to open a branch there to make our name popular. At least people heard of Charter Bank. So they're saying that they will keep the Charter Bank office there, although they don't do business, but they will have the name there. So people over in China will get familiar with the name Charter Bank. Once they can start doing business, then Charter Bank, we heard of it, So they will be able to do business right away. I say that is very expensive. It's saying that not really, but we call that an investment because we know that we are preparing for the strategy change in the future. Now, so these are not something that you can do it in 1 or 2 months, right? They did that over there for 2 to 3 years because that they know the market is going to open, but they don't really know how the China government is going to manage it. So they prepare for, the popularity of their name. Now, a change in composition of workforce. Composition workforce means that the type of worker. Now, in the past, usually, let's say that most of the organizations will have, we call that have you heard of Generation X and Y, those? X and Y is that really talking about the different people when they were born. So basically, we say the older generation is the one that who born, we call it is X generation. Actually, you say that the old people. And then they will have the Generation Y, younger. Now we have Generation Z. Z means that, if you like to use the Hong Kong saying that 90後, right? They already graduate from university and they are working in the society for, a few years already. Now, composition, maybe we can say that a different generation of people work together in the same organizations. Then you say, what's wrong? So, is that a concern? Yes. Generation X, the older people have a different value. They like different reward. They like a different way to do things. And they respect authorities. But younger generation is different, right? You are more educated. You don't want to under a very authoritative managers. You like to have new idea. So how are you going to make all these people work together without conflicts? Now, that is one compositions. Others could be is the different people from different countries work together. You learned about the cultural last week, right? What happened if people have a very different value and you put them together? How are you going to motivate them? How are you going to talk about team spirit? American people were saying that what team spirit? Chinese were saying that no team spirit. We are not enjoying it. Now, so looking at the composition, because nowadays it's more diverse from different cultures, from different generations. And also, if you want to say that teamwork, what about people from different backgrounds? People who are more from science will be more concerned about numbers, quantity. They want to be able to measure it. But when you are looking at people from, business, when they graduate, those managers, they're looking at, the quality of the project, the quality of life, So people really have a very different value principles. You cannot say they are right or wrong, but it's just because they have a different, point of view. New equipment, of course, that this one is quite clear, right? And also changing employee attitudes. My experience with the local Chinese Hong Kong attitude about workers' attitude is changing. In the past, we really think that Chinese people are crazy of money. So when they're working in organizations, when you are looking at reward, you think that money and promotion will really work in Hong Kong. But nowadays, that kind of attitude is changing. But I guess it is true because years ago in the 50s and 60s, people are poor, so money means a lot. But nowadays, the society is getting better. And actually, we're saying that why there are so many billions here in Hong Kong or nowadays is because this generation, we never faced the war. So if we never experienced the war, then a lot of time we accumulate a lot of, we're saying that wealth from your parents, and they can pass down to the next generation. But if there are wars, then it is very damaging. So in this case, the older generation accumulate a lot of money, and they will be able to pass down to the next generations. So the society is more wealthy. Now, so the younger generations, when they see things a little different, because they have a different attitude about positions, promotions, reward, and all those. All right, now, so this is just some of the example. I can continue going on, but the point here is a lot of things are changing. Maybe we don't realize it, but we do have to be aware of. You like it or not, you know it or not, something is changing without our knowledge. All right. Next thing we want to say, okay, some of the change are slow, some of the change are sudden. Should we deal with them differently? Yes. Now, let's look at one is what we call the calm water change. Calm water change means what? Just like the water is calm. Calm means that it will go slow. It will go slow. Before I'm going to talk about this, I'd like to share with you a story. This chapter has a lot of stories, so I'm worried that I will go over time. I have a story to share with you, but before I do that, just a minute, let me get a pen. I'd like to share with you this story, but you have to respond. If we want to make change successful, what do you think is the most important thing? If you want to make change successful, time, okay, now put it down, time, so I can test if the camera. Time, not good. Not very good, huh? Oh well, forget it. We just. Any others? Self-confidence. That means individual self. Self-goal. Support. Would that be all? Let me tell you the answer. In order to be successful, there is one word is very important. Not from me. There's, this is a theory, or, it is a concept. In order to make change successful, this word is important. You know what that word means? And. E-N-D. See, what are you talking about? Don't we need to look at times, ourselves and support and everything? This will not work if no end. Now, why? I share with you this story. Actually, this story I learned it from a British professor. When he was teaching this subject, that was the story he mentioned, and I find that this is a very good way to understand why end is the most important part. Now, the story was talking about in America, there is one professor. He's very famous in one subject. Let's don't worry about what subject, right? Because, in America, the school, the university have a lot of funding. So they give the professor a lot of money to do research. So Americans' research is actually pretty advanced, compared with the world. So this professor actually is very famous, in this subjects. One day, someone told him, saying that, you know what? I heard someone in Japan, also very good, and know a lot about this subject. So the American, very, what are the culture? We call it is very assertive, right? So this professor said, really? Someone is better than me? Okay, let me go and pay a visit and see what he knows that I don't know. Because all the things we learn are very much based on research finding. And we have a big research on it. So I think that American, especially I'm a professor leading this project, know the best. So he said, maybe I should go to visit this Japanese so-called scholar and see what he knows that I haven't learned it yet. So of course we used to go to the long story short, right? So he went to Japan and find this Japanese scholar. The day when he went there and find his house, he find that actually he's a very old man. And the Japanese, they like to sit not on the table, right? The tatami, right? They sit on the ground, and then there's very low table. And American, of course, in a suit, right? You're going to visit some scholar somewhere else, you're going to well dressed because you think it's official. So he was in very well dressed, a suit. And then he stand at the door and talk to the scholar. I say, I am a professor of blah, blah, blah. Now I want to come and discuss some of the, subject with you. The scholar, actually fairly old, the Japanese scholar, invite him to come in and sit at the tatami because they have no tables, right? So he saw a nice suit, but anyway, we just sit down. So just like any traditional Japanese culture, the old man start pouring tea for the guests. The Japanese teacup is very small, right? I'm sure you know it, right? So what he did is he would start pouring tea for himself, a little teacup, and then he start pouring tea to this professor's teacup. Maybe because he's old, when he was holding the teapot, his hand is shaking. And then he start pouring the tea. And the teacup is full already, and the water starts spilling out on the table. Then the professor said, this old man, his hand is shaking. No wonder, he don't know how to stop. But when the water get to the table and starts spilling off the table, the professor is kind of worried about his suit, right? Immediately hold his hand and help him to put down the teapot. And after that, you know what that scholar said? Oh, my eye glasses. You know what this Japanese scholar tell the American professor? he said, see if you got the wisdom. It is true. When the teacup is full, I cannot give you more tea. What he's trying to say. You know what he's trying to say? You got it? Nothing? That's right. In other words, if you are full of yourself, if you think you know everything, if you are the best, I cannot teach you. Why? You are not open-minded. All right? A lot of time, yeah, it is, We're thinking that we know the best, Learn what? Don't tell me anything. I know the best. So what is it saying actually is a very subtle way to tell people. If you always say the good old time, the best of blah, blah, blah in the past, you're always living in the past, and it is very difficult for you to accept something new because you don't have room to learn new things. Now, this is the reason. Actually, it turned out to be quite true. Going back to last week, we talked about Hofstad, talking about the 5 dimensions. There was one dimension is called long-term oriented and short-term oriented, right? And the short-term oriented, we're saying that is Chinese. When we say short-term, that doesn't mean that only short-term. We're talking about we treasure the past. If we treasure the past, this may be one reason that, not that because we don't want to change, but we think so much living in the past and we don't want to accept the new things. Now, yep. The best things to do it is, first thing, end means that if you are just still thinking of the old thing, you are not going to be happy and, start a new life. By the way, talk about this. Since you are all young, you are in that age that you are going to have boyfriend and girlfriends. Now, once you are getting into this age, start making friends, especially boyfriend and girlfriends. Many of young people who experience this is what we call that, can I call it 失戀? Or you have problem with your boyfriend and girlfriend. I hope that you don't experience this. But what happened if this happened? This unfortunately is going to happen to one of us, right? Of course, there are some professional will help us to get over it. Now, because we have to study. I mean, at least I have to study management, and we have to study psychologists. And we also have to learn about counseling, because what happens if our workers, is having problem? So as a leader, we like to give them some counseling. So that is what I learned, saying that if something has happened that your boyfriend and girlfriend run away, what should you do? Some will tell you, look for another girlfriend. Some will saying that, that I'm very sad and he's going to cry and don't go to school and everything. So what is the right way to do it? The answer is there's no right way or wrong way, but you have to accept human being is a human being. If we are running into something sad, don't control yourself and tell yourself you're happy. It won't work. So generally, they're saying that if you're running into something really sad, let yourself go. Go and cry. Do whatever you want to, because you are a human being. It is right and it is not bad that you're going to explore yourself, feel whatever way you feel comfortable. But they say no more than a week. You give yourself a week time, just to cry and don't go to school, that's fine. I have students. The day before the examination, the next day they have a big examinations. That night, her boyfriend broke up with her. She was totally lost. She came and told me, what should I do? Now, usually, I don't care because school regulation, no makeup. But in her case, I consider, because I understand when someone is in a really bad situations, I mean, I can talk to her, but it is not going to help. I think that she needs some time for herself. So, I suggest take a week break of yourself. And if people blame you for not going to school, don't going to work, or don't eat, or don't sleep, forget it. You is you. Give yourself some time. But after that, after a week, you need to recover. So how long it takes you to recover, it will be up to you, but you do need to think of. The past is past. No matter what happened, don't ever go back and think of things will change. And you are just going through another cycle. So if it is not working, just walk forward. So after a week, you start thinking of, you do need to change, and you need to end whatever that is. You cannot go on forever. Now, and actually, it's not that it is a textbook material. You look at the nature of our world. That anything you want them to grow again, you have to trim them and cut it, right? Like growing rice. When they are rice, then you have to unplug the whole thing, because after you unplug it, you can go and plant the next seasons. And I don't know whether you know Christmas flowers or those Chinese fruit, you probably will bought some, right? If you want them to grow next year, you do have to trim it. That means cut it so they get a chance to grow. If you don't cut it, the tree will die. Now, so what is it? Even the nature is the same thing, that you have to end something first. So you give room and time for the others. So can you think, what is the next thing we need to do? What will be the next step we do? After you end everything? Huh? Start? Okay. We just saying that change, right? You can start making the change. And the others, the last step, you don't review. Now, change is easy to understand, right? You say that now I end and I am going to pick up something new. Did I use the example already? When at the beginning of the semester, you say, I want to come to class on time. I want to study. I want to do all the exercise, right? Because now you are a university student. You are not secondary student. You don't need the teacher to force you. You already make your step. And then you start making the change, right? What is the last one? So can you maintain that to the end? Huh? Maintain to the end of the semester or end of 4 years? You say, wow, that is hard, right? Why? Because we have a habit, right? So if we get excited and people say we got motivated, yes, we will change. But this kind of excitement will die down. So when the excitement die down, then what? You go back to the old practice. So the last thing that we have to go and do it is that make sure that we're going to continue it. That new thing as a habit. So I was saying that if you don't make it as a habit, you will continue going back to the old way, habit, H-A-B-I-T. So in other words is, we need to learn how to give away the old thing so we get room to make the change. And after we make the change, we are going to make it a habit, right? Now, does that make sense to us now? Does it make sense? Why N is so important? So is this theory. Now, Westerners sometimes, when they talk about change, they use a different word, but it's exactly the same. They're saying that the most important thing is, first one is unfreeze yourself. Unfreeze means what? That end yourself, whatever that is. And then you're going to change it to a new stage. Change whatever you want to. But after you change it, you want that to make sure it is continue. So you have to freeze it to make the change permanently. Now, a good way to look at it, I think that this is a good example, a good picture. Let's assume you are an ice cube. If your ice cube is a square, a triangle one, and you want to change it to a round one, what are you going to do? You want to make it warm, turn out to be a water, and you have to refreeze it to a new shape. Then you can change it from the triangle one to the round one. Now, I was saying that these are not just for your business classes, Actually, it's something that for yourself, for grow up, that tell yourself, life is going to change one way or the others, So how you're going to go through the change? Yes, you are young, you're excited about it, but how long is your excitement is going to go? And that you're going to maintain, that change is successful. All right, then after we finish looking at this, we are more concerned is, all right, next thing is what we're saying that sometimes that the change is not that, take that long. And sometimes it comes very suddenly. Now, so what can we do? So the other one is called white water. White water means that the change very fast. I think it's a good word in English, but Chinese we sometimes say, when you look at the sea, when the sea is calm, you don't see any bak tao long. That means that the sea is very calm. But when the sea is very rough, the water goes through up, then we call that bak tao long, means that, the bubbles with the water. Now, white water actually means that it is a very rough change because most likely it's due to the environmental uncertainty and prediction is very difficult. Now, in this case, it really requires the managers to think of either you are going to change really fast or you have to manage the change, itself or respond to it quickly. Or, that you always have what we call the contingency plan, right? In case it won't work or something goes wrong, what can we do? Right now, so white water is more difficult to deal with. Next thing we have to think of is, so far it sounds like when there is a need for it, we have to make the change. So we consider that is reacting to a situation to get help. Now, but the best thing is proactive, means that take the initiative right away when one realizing is difficult. There is some difficulties. So in other words, this is something. Now, in the past, we like to say what? Feedback, right? If we know what did we do wrong in the past, hopefully we'll change. But nowadays, a lot of things that in management we're saying that is feed forward, looking forward. And that actually is more critical. There are many successful businessmen. When you really look at why they are so successful, many of them are crazy men, I think. But they do have something that which we don't have, is the vision of the future. They will tell you, things will change in the future. What should we do? Now, use few examples. I don't know if you know about Tesla. They want to develop those automatic car, right? The guy who developed that is Elon Musk. He's a crazy guy. I really think he's a crazy guy. But he does have a vision of the future, thinking that, how are we going to develop, a lot of things are automatic. Why car is not? actually, there is another things that is coming up. I probably will talk about that next time when I look at the cultural issues. Someone is coming up with an idea about future, and I don't know whether you know him again. Uh, you know who is in the past owned Alibaba? You know what is his name? That's right, Marwan. He's coming up with a second prediction, which is in an interview. I was very surprised what he said because I never thought of it. Now he developed a lot of technologies and all these things. And you know what? He's saying that in the future, what Chinese need? Can you guess? I never can guess. He mentions that in the future, Chinese will need a different kind of movies. I was wondering what is he talking about. So I will talk about that later on. Actually, I can, if I can find his interview, I will show it to you because he was thinking that a different kind of movie will change the culture of the Chinese. It's talking about heroism, all this. But anyway, wait until later on. I think that next week we'll talk about culture. We'll bring that up again. But when he mentioned it to me. I mentioned this to the interview. I was very surprised. These are the people who are. Why he is so successful? He is not nothing. He never go overseas for educations, and he is just a school teacher. But he can create a magic in China, because you really can find that he is very proactive in thinking. It's something that beyond our imagination, he can foresee it. So these are a lot of examples that we can think of, that why people are successful, there is a reason of it, sometimes we may not know why. Okay, now, so let's come down to is looking at what are the type of change that we are seeing. Now, the type of change, there are actually at least, I was saying that 4 things. But the first one is not, it is the cause of the change itself. It's the strategy change. Now, I think that I already mentioned it, right? The organizations, cannot base on the same thing and not moving on. You do have to think of, how you're going to ensure the company's success. I can show you another example that we never thought of it. You know Coca-Cola, right? Do you know about Pepsi-Cola? If you eat in Kentucky Fried Chicken, they only serve you Pepsi-Cola. Now, Pepsi-Cola cannot compete with Coca-Cola because Pepsi-Cola actually is quite behind. The other day, I was looking at Coca-Cola, all their strategy and thing, because Coca-Cola keep coming up with new products. But they have some, winning product, and they have some, product that didn't really help them much. So I was wondering what Pepsi is doing. If Pepsi is not going to do something special, Pepsi is going to lose out. And so if you were Pepsi, what would you do? You probably say, we need to come up with a new product, right? But before you come up with a new product, you have to think of, is there any new strategy that you can use? And I find out that recently, I don't think they are selling in Hong Kong. Pepsi-Cola is coming out with a soda. Nothing ever Coca-Cola did. But instead, it's a soda, which is kind of like, they didn't say it is tea, but they're saying that if you drink that, you will be very calm and that helps you to sleep. Coca-Cola have caffeine, right? So when you're excited, you're happy, you drink Coca-Cola. So Pepsi-Cola is thinking, maybe we should come up with a product. It's opposite. When you want to be calm, you want to settle down, you want to have a good sleep, you drink that. So in that case, you don't have to head on to compete with Coca-Cola, right? And Pepsi-Cola did it. And They have an English name for it. I don't even know how to read it because that word is very funny. SP something something F, it's very difficult to pronounce. But anyway, we'll see how that works. And they haven't started in Hong Kong yet. Now, but once you have this kind of strategic change, of course, you need to what? To change the structure. The structure means that your company is setting up. Now, if you change your product, may be easy. But if you change the company's direction, then things will be a little different. Then you have to change the structure. Of course, you also have to change the technologies, right? Technology here means that any technique or equipment that can help you to achieve it. And the last thing is people. Now, the first few, the strategy usually is set up by the senior management, right? And managers will have to think of the structure, and the professional have come up with the technologies. But when it comes to people, it's our department because we are in management. So later on, we need to look at, how are we going to deal with people who is not a machine that you can just turn it on and off. All right? Okay, how about we are going to take a 15 minutes break and then we'll continue, all right?